12, I'm 81. My Amish husband took me to church the morning after our wedding instead of home. Even now, when I smell wet wool and lamp smoke together, my knees lock. I'm standing in that little meeting house again, cold air slipping under the door, my new black shoes pinching my heels, and Eli's hand resting at my back like he's guiding me somewhere safe. He isn't. The benches shine from years of lye soap. A baby coughs near the stove. Someone has left a thumbprint in the frost on the third window, and I keep staring at it because I can't look at the women turning toward me, one by one, as if they already know what happened after the wedding supper, or what didn't. Eli leans close and says, "Just stand when I stand." His breath smells like burnt coffee. He keeps pulling at the seam of his left sleeve, over and over, and that's when I understand he's afraid too. I remember, no, wait, it wasn't Sunday. It was Monday morning, because the milk cans were still lined beside the road. Then Bishop Amos calls my name. Not ours, mine. The room goes quiet. So quiet I hear the click in my jaw when I swallow. I don't know why my husband has brought me here instead of home, why my mother won't meet my eyes, or why Ruth is crying into her apron. I only know every door behind me is closed. I'm 19 years old. I'm 81 now. Quick pause. My name is Sarah, and this is Rebecca Amish home. If these stories stay with you, if they make you feel less alone, subscribe. It's free, and it keeps these stories alive. Tell me in the comments, when did silence make you doubt your own body? A super chat or membership tells me these voices are worth hearing, and keeps this going. Now, back to what happened. What happened was already decided long before Bishop Amos spoke my name. In our Ordnung, a wife followed her husband, and a husband answered for his house before God and the church. Nobody sat me down and said, "Your fear will count less than his duty." They didn't have to. I learned it from the way women lowered their voices when men entered, from the way Mama slid the biggest piece of chicken onto Papa's plate, and from the small wooden sign above our washstand that read, "Obedience is peace" in blue paint. I was 12 when I first wondered whether peace was supposed to make your stomach hurt. I dropped a jar of peaches, and Papa's silence lasted through supper. The syrup dried sticky between the floorboards while Mama hummed, "Oh, sacred head," soft as breath, and nobody mentioned the glass under my bare heel. That's the thing nobody tells you. A rule can live in a room without anyone saying it aloud. By the time I was old enough to marry, I could read a whole warning in one lifted eyebrow. Women didn't ask brides what they wanted. They asked whether the sheets were aired, whether the bread sponge was set, whether the husband's shirts had enough room across the shoulders. Once, at 16, I asked Aunt Lena why Cousin Mary stopped coming to singings after her wedding. Aunt Lena's thimble froze against a patch of green cloth, just for a second. Then she said Mary had a restless spirit and told me to fetch more thread. 2 weeks later, Mary sat behind the married women with a bruise-colored shadow under one eye and thanked God for correction. No one stared. That was how staring worked among us. Everyone saw, and no one looked. So when Bishop Amos called me forward that Monday morning, I already knew the danger wasn't in what he might say. It was in how quickly the room would teach me to agree. Eli and I had been married 14 hours. My older sister, Ruth, had tried to prepare me 3 weeks before, beside the smokehouse where the hams hung in white cloth. She said 11 words: "Be still, be kind, and don't make him feel ashamed." 11. I counted them later while scrubbing blood from a dish towel. No, not blood. Raspberry filling from the wedding pies. See, even now my mind puts those two reds together. Ruth was 26. With 4 children and a pale burn mark across her right wrist from a canning jar. She wouldn't tell me what a husband might ask, only that God made marriage, and God didn't make mistakes. Eli had received even less. His father told him to pray, be gentle, and finish what was begun. Neither of us knew what that meant. We were two frightened children, dressed like grown people, carrying rules older than both our families. I'd met Eli at a corn husking when I was 17. He handed me a red ear, which meant he could kiss me, but he only touched my cheek with 2 fingers, because my little brother was watching from behind a wagon wheel. I liked that about him. He never crowded a doorway. He whistled to nervous horses before reaching for their bridles, and once he walked 3 miles in sleet to bring Mama a packet of cloves because she'd mentioned her tooth hurt. I loved him. I think I loved him. I don't know if I knew what love was yet, but I trusted the way he fixed broken things without scolding them. The week before our wedding, he carved a shallow bird into the handle of my broom. It looked more like a fat turnip with wings, and we laughed until Ruth shushed us. He wasn't cruel. He was 23, no, 24. I always get that wrong. His birthday had been 6 days before. The women prepared me for marriage by teaching me everything except what marriage might ask of my body. We boiled linens in the copper kettle, packed lavender between my dresses, and stitched my new initials into 6 towels with blue thread. Mama told me how to stretch stew for unexpected guests. Aunt Lena showed me where to hide a little egg money in the hem of an apron. Ruth pressed a cake of rose soap into my palm and said, "You'll want to feel clean." Then she looked toward the yard, where Eli was helping Papa mend a gate, and bit the loose skin beside her thumbnail until it bled. Nobody named desire. Nobody named fear. Nobody said I could stop anything once it had begun. At the wedding supper, Miriam squeezed my hand under the table so hard her ring left a half moon in my skin. When I asked what was wrong, she said, "Nothing. Just remember your prayers." That night I remembered every prayer except one that could save me. Our first room belongs to Eli's widowed aunt, who's gone to stay with her daughter so we can have privacy. A kerosene lamp burns on a washstand with one short leg, and someone has wedged a folded seed catalog beneath it. The quilt is brown and mustard, heavy enough to pin my knees when I sit down. Outside, a loose piece of tin taps the barn roof every few breaths. Tap, wait, tap. The room smells of cold ashes, rose soap, and the sharp wool of Eli's damp coat. I'm wearing a white nightdress Mama sewed with 3 pearl buttons at the throat, though one button is gray because she ran out of white. Frost feathers the lower corners of the window. Eli stands beside the bed with his suspenders hanging loose, rubbing his right thumb across the callus on his left palm. He looks like a boy waiting to be punished for breaking a tool. He says, "Ruth talked to you?" I nod, though she hasn't, not truly. I ask, "Your das talked to you?" He nods too. That is our first lie as husband and wife, both of us pretending we've been given a map. Eli sits beside me, leaving a hand's width of quilt between us. The mattress ropes creak. My feet are cold enough to ache, but sweat gathers beneath my arms, and I keep pressing my tongue to the roof of my mouth until I taste metal. He reaches for the top button of my nightdress, then stops. "Is this how?" he whispers. I almost laugh because the question is so helpless. Instead I say, "I suppose." He closes his eyes and prays one sentence under his breath. I can't hear the words, only my name at the end, and I want to comfort him. That's what still breaks my heart. I'm scared of him and sorry for him at once. His hand moves. I stop breathing. He touches me as if he's following instructions neither of us has heard, pausing whenever I flinch, then going on, because stopping seems like another kind of failure. "Are you all right?" he asks. I say, "I don't know." He whispers, "Neither do I." The lamp flame makes a soft popping sound, and somewhere in the wall, a mouse scratches 3 times. I remember those 3 scratches more clearly than my own voice. When I pull away, he freezes. For 1 second, I think that will be the end. Then he says his father warned him a husband mustn't leave a marriage unfinished, and I hear myself answer, "Then don't." I want him to stop and hold me closer at the same time. My jaw locks. My hands shake against the mustard squares of the quilt. He isn't angry. He's terrified, and his terror still carries more authority than mine. Afterward, neither of us looks at the other. Eli pours water into the basin and spills some on the floor, where it spreads around the washstand leg in a dark crescent. He says, "I'm sorry," so softly I might have imagined it. I try to stand, but my knees fold, and I sit back down with one hand gripping the bedpost. My body feels far away, like something left outside in winter. I don't even know what to call that feeling. I only know I count the knots in the pine board beside the bed. 7 dark knots, one shaped like a little open mouth, and I keep counting until the lamp goes out. Eli lies on the floor in his undershirt, using his folded coat as a pillow. Near dawn, I hear him crying without sound. Then the rooster calls, and instead of taking me to the farmhouse that is meant to become our home, he hitches the buggy for church. On the road, the wheels cut through frozen ruts hard enough to make my teeth click. Eli held the reins in both hands and told me he needed counsel because he believed he had failed as a husband. He thought my fear proved he'd done something sinful, but he didn't know whether the sin was hurting me or stopping too soon. That was the plain harm. Neither of us understood that my body could say no, even after I'd said vows. At the meeting house, Bishop Amos listened while Eli spoke for both of us. I sat 3 feet away on a bench with a split along the edge, and wasn't asked a single question until 11 men had already discussed my duty. 11 men. The youngest was my cousin Samuel, who still owed me 2 buttons from a childhood game. Bishop Amos finally turned to me and said, "Can you submit with a willing heart?" There was no question about whether I was safe, sore, frightened, or ready. I said yes, because every face in the room had taught me the right answer years before. He wasn't trying to hurt me. That's what makes it worse. Eli wasn't either. They were using the only words they'd been given: duty, order, obedience, peace. We had no word for consent, no clear teaching about a woman's body, no thought that kindness could include stopping without shame. The silence wasn't an empty space. It was built into the wedding talks, the separate benches, the jokes men told after barn raisings, the way women washed sheets before daylight and never said why. Decades later, a nurse showed me a page with one sentence printed beneath a simple drawing of 2 hands. Agreement can be withdrawn at any time. I read it 4 times. Had either of us known that one sentence, our first night, might have become a beginning instead of a wound. But that morning, I lowered my eyes, and the men decided we should go home and try again, as though courage alone could erase what silence had made. We went home, because that was what married people did. The farmhouse waited at the end of a lane lined with bare maples, and the blue kettle on the stove had a chip shaped like Ohio. I learned to keep busy before Eli came upstairs. I would knead bread until my shoulders burned, mend socks by lamplight, count backward from 100 when the bed ropes creaked. By the time our first winter ended, I could leave my body without moving an inch. I'd watch the crack in the ceiling and imagine walking along it like a road. Sometimes Eli noticed. He'd stop and ask where I'd gone, and I'd say, "Nowhere." That was nearly funny, in a bleak sort of way, because nowhere became the busiest place I knew. He learned to ask less. I learned to answer faster, and every morning we ate oatmeal from 2 blue bowls and passed the brown sugar as if nothing in our house had ever broken. There were kind days, too, which made the hard ones harder to name. Eli warmed my boots beside the stove before chores, and when our first baby, Anna, had croup, he sat upright for 2 nights with her against his chest, while steam clouded the kitchen windows. I loved him then. I resented him then. Both were true. That's the thing nobody tells you. A person can be gentle in one room and still carry harm into another. without knowing the shape of it. I built little rules for survival. Keep the lamp low, face the wall, think of tomorrow's washing, never cry until the pump handle covered the sound. He built rules, too. He prayed longer. He worked later. Once he slept in the barn for a week because he said he felt like a beast. I wanted to tell him he wasn't. I wanted to tell him I felt hunted anyway. Instead, I took him a jar of coffee and left it beside the red halter. The first woman who almost told me the truth was Miriam. We were quilting a wedding ring pattern in Lena's front room, with snow packed against the windows and orange peel drying on the stove. Miriam's needle stopped halfway through a blue piece. She said, "Does Eli ever ask first?" 7 words. I looked at her, and she looked down so fast her bonnet strings swung. "Ask what?" I said. She pulled the thread through and whispered, "Never mind." Across the frame, Ruth's hands went still, just still. No one spoke for nearly a minute, though Lena's clock ticked loud enough to feel inside my teeth. Then someone asked whether the hens had started laying. That was the moment I knew. Not what had happened to Miriam, not exactly. But I knew the silence in my house had cousins there. Ruth's story came out in pieces, never in a whole sentence. On washing day, she once said, "Some nights I sleep in the pantry." Another time, while peeling apples, she showed me a small key tied inside her sleeve and said it fit the root cellar door. Her husband Daniel wasn't a monster. He repaired neighbors' roofs without taking payment and sang the bass line so low the bench vibrated. But when Ruth said she was tired, he heard rejection, and rejection had been taught to him as a wife's sin. She slept beside sacks of potatoes twice that winter. Then Aunt Lena found out and told her, "Don't make private trouble public." Ruth burned the key in the cook stove, and then give me a second. She went back upstairs that night carrying a lamp with a cracked green shade. 4 months later, she stopped asking me whether I was all right. By our 3rd year, the pattern was plain enough to see, and still impossible to name. Women brought casseroles to bruised women, tucked babies into their arms, and called exhaustion a season. Questions were sent upward to husbands, ministers, bishops, then returned to us as advice about patience. When Mary once said she feared going home, 3 women prayed over her, and 1 quietly fixed her torn cuff. No one asked what tore it. Doubt was treated like smoke. Open a window, wave it away, don't look for the fire. I almost spoke after Anna was born, when the midwife, Elsie, washed her hands in a white enamel basin and asked why I flinched when Eli entered. My mouth opened. Then Mama stepped into the room carrying chicken broth, and the words vanished. I said the stitches hurt. Elsie nodded, but her eyes stayed on mine. I carried that look for 52 years. I was 71 when the words finally found me. Not in a church, not even in a counselor's room. I was sitting in a county clinic with a paper gown tied wrong at the back, waiting for a bone scan, while a television played a cooking show with the sound off. On the wall hung a poster showing 2 hands, one open and one pulling away. Beneath it were 6 words: "Consent must be clear and freely given." I read them once, then again. My right foot began tapping so hard, the paper on the exam table crackled under me. A nurse named Joanne came in carrying a purple folder and asked whether I was cold. I said no, though my teeth were knocking. She followed my eyes to the poster and asked, "Did anyone ever teach you that?" And something inside me went quiet. Joanne drew a small circle on the back of an appointment sheet. Inside it, she wrote my body. Around it, she drew another circle and wrote my choice. Such a child's drawing, such a late lesson. She explained boundaries, consent, and how fear can make a body freeze even when the mouth says yes. I wasn't angry. I thought I would be, but I was just sad. Devastatingly sad. Sad for the girl in the pearl-button nightdress, sitting beneath a mustard quilt and trying to protect the boy who frightened her. Sad for Eli, too, because nobody had taught him that love could pause. We had both been locked in the same house, though I was the one without a key. That's the thing nobody tells you. Naming a wound doesn't make it new. It only shows you how long you've been carrying it. I tried to explain this to my granddaughter Rachel in her bright apartment, where the refrigerator made ice by itself and a basil plant leaned toward the window. She listened, held my hand, and said, "Grandma, why didn't you leave?" She meant it kindly. I knew that. But the question landed like a stone, because leaving wasn't a door I'd refused to open. It was a door I couldn't see. I grieved the life we might have had if someone had given us plain words before vows. I grieved tenderness that could have grown without fear, and mornings when Eli might have asked, "Do you want me close?" instead of asking God whether he'd done his duty. He died at 68 with my name on his lips. I still miss the way he whistled to horses. I still wish he had known how to hear me. Both truths sit at my table. And I miss things from home. I miss the sound of horses at dawn, harness rings clicking in the blue cold while breath rose white above the lane. I miss bread from a wood oven, the crust blistered dark on one side, and Mama brushing flour from my cheek with the back of her wrist. I miss my grandmother's hands when she prayed, knuckles wide from work, one thumbnail split straight down the middle, her palms resting open on her apron. Those are real gifts. So are the songs sung without instruments, 4 parts finding each other in a room, with no wires and no stage. I am homesick for a place that hurt me. I don't say that to excuse the hurt. I say it because the heart is strange, and mine still remembers the smell of rain on a buggy blanket. Beauty and harm lived in the same house, and sometimes they used the same voice. The harm had a name, silence dressed as holiness. I can say that now without hating everyone who handed it down. Most of them believed they were guarding something good. Some were community, steadiness, care for the old, hands that arrived before you asked when a barn burned down. Those things mattered. They still matter to me. But I no longer bow to any rule that asks a person to disappear. I make bread on Saturdays in a small electric oven, and I still score 3 lines across the top the way Mama did. Then I sit at my table with women who speak plainly, even when their voices shake. We don't throw away every old thing. We choose. That choosing is the life I didn't know I was allowed to have. And when I think of the women who stayed, I don't picture cowards. I picture tired hands doing their best in rooms with no doors. If you grew up somewhere your own body was kept from you like something dangerous, I see you. You survived something, and surviving is enough. You are not broken because you learned to go quiet, and you are not foolish because you loved people who couldn't protect you. Your body wasn't disloyal when it froze, shook, went numb, or tried to leave the room without you. It was trying to keep you here. To the one still inside, I see how careful you have to be. To the one who left, freedom can feel lonely before it feels like home. To the one thinking about leaving, your questions are not a sin. To the one who's married, and only now finding words, it isn't too late. To the one who recognized herself a few minutes ago, put both feet on the floor. Wherever you are in this, I see you. And you are not alone. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you felt listening to this, or tell me the moment you first learned your body belonged to you. You don't have to tell every detail. A sentence is enough. Even one word can be a door. There is so much more I haven't said yet. I'm just getting started. There are stories I haven't been brave enough to tell, but I'm getting closer. Subscribe to Rebecca Amish Home if you want to stay for the voices that were kept quiet too long. And to the members and Super Chat family, you're the reason the next story gets told. If you want to be part of that, the door is always open. I spent most of my life thinking silence was peace. It wasn't. Peace is being able to speak and still belong. That's what I want for you. You deserved words before you needed them.